Let me ask you a question. What makes a good germicide? What makes a good agent that kills? An agent that kills. Why would you say this is a good killing agent? Well, common sense. Let's see. If I say to you that this germicide works really fast in low concentrations, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? It works really fast and you don't have to use that much of it. Common sense. Am I right? Good. How about if I say that this agent that I'm going to give you, you can easily dissolve it in water to mix it and then use it. What do you think? Would that be a good thing?
Yeah.
Considering that almost everything dissolves in water. So that would be a good thing. Good. All right. How about if I tell you that this germicide, after you make it, it lasts for 2 minutes. And then you have to make it again. Why? Because in 2 minutes it breaks down. Would that be a good thing?
No.
Of course not. Because you'd be spending the rest of your life making these reagents. Versus the same thing lasting 10 years. Am I right? So stability is important. A reagent that is stable over a long period of time would obviously make a good germicide. So let's review now. Stable over a long period of time, Soluble, am I right? Works effectively in low concentration. We said that was a good thing, am I right? Good. All right, let's see. I'm trying to make sure I cover all my bases. Here we go. This reagent, kills everything. Is that a good thing to use or not? Versus this reagent only kills this bacteria only. Which one would you think you would use? The one that kills everything. That's called broad spectrum. Broad spectrum means an agent that kills multiple things. So a germicide that is soluble in water, that works under low concentration, that is stable, and that has broad spectrum activity would be a good germicide. Am I right? Good. All right, how about organic matter? Would you use a reagent that is resistant to organic matter, or would you use an agent that breaks down in the presence of organic matter? Of course, the resistant one. Okay, how about an agent that can actually penetrate the surface that you're treating? Would that be a good thing or not? That would, it kind of depends on the surface, am I right? But in general, that's a good thing. Because you can get that layering effect. So that would be a good feature of that. How about a reagent that is non-corrosive? Do you know what corrosive means? Breaks down the countertop, right? Would a reagent be non-corrosive be a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing. Non-staining does not change the color of anything. Would be a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing, right? There you go. You're getting me scared here, right? All right. How about something that you can actually afford? That's a good thing. It's a very good thing, especially nowadays. Something that makes good smell. Of course, good thing. Sanitizing, deodorizing. Yeah.
Is the word germicide synonymous with disinfectant?
Well, disinfectant can be a germicide, right? Is a germicide. Germicide meaning an agent that kills germs. Or you can also refer to as microbiocide. Microbiocide is an agent that kills microbes, which are the same thing as germs. So guess what we did? We covered this line. I almost turned the thing off. We covered this line by using our commons. There it is. Yeah, a good agent or a good germicide is one that has hopefully all of these. Now, not all of them will have all of them, right? Some have more of these characteristics than others. So we now can categorize these germicides based on high-level germicide, intermediate-level germicide, or low-level germicide. And the main characteristic, listen to me please, the main characteristic here is this. Is it a sterilizer or a disinfector? If it sterilizes things, then it's a high-level germicide. A high-level germicide is a germicide that can kill all living organisms, including and viruses. Yeah. A high-level germicide is a germicide that can reach sterilization levels. We can use certain chemical agents on things like this, for example, heart-lung machine. You have to sterilize the heart-lung machine before you roll it into the operating room. But you're not going to put it in the autoclave. I mean, you can if you find the autoclave big enough. But by the time you're done, you're not going to have a heart-lung machine. You're going to have abstract art. That's what you're going to have. But it's not going to work. So now what? I have to roll in this heart-lung machine into the operating room, but it has to be sterilized. So you have to use high-level germicides on it. Something like hydrogen peroxide, for example. The hospital-grade hydrogen peroxides they would use to actually wipe down the machine with it. To wipe out every corner of it to make sure it's sterilized before they roll it into the operating room. So certain things that cannot be autoclaved, obviously, will have to be treated with these high-level germicides to achieve what level? Sterilization level before you can use it. Other hospital equipment like respiratory equipment, thermometers, you can afford using intermediate level germicides on them. You don't have to reach sterilization levels, but you can reach disinfection levels. Now what's the difference? The intermediate level germicides, look what they do. They can destroy fungal spores, but they do not destroy endospores, bacterial endospores. So because of that, of course, you're not reaching sterilization levels. Then you got your low-level germicides. Obviously, they're not as effective as the intermediate ones are. So some germicides can fulfill all of these criteria. On top of that, they reach sterilization levels, so they tend to be more in the high-level germicide category than the other ones in between there. Okay. We talked about the physical agents. Let's finish this part of the discussion with chemical agents. What I'm going to show you now is that with chemical agents, we can use gas or we can use liquids. Nobody walks in with a gas cylinder on his back. And no, when we're talking about gas, we're actually bubbling the gas in a liquid for easy application. So some of the gases that are used here, they're not necessarily going to be in a tank on your shoulder. No, the company actually bubbles the gas in a solution, in a liquid, so now you can walk around and spray it. But technically, who's doing the killing? The gas. The liquid is for ease of application. That's it. That's all it is. Formaldehyde, as well as ethylene oxide, those they fall under gas. Look at that. They're high-level germicides. They achieve sterilization. The red arrow means they're used in healthcare. The yellow means you may have it under your kitchen sink. Household. You're not going to have formaldehyde. You better not. Under your kitchen sink. Formaldehyde can cause cancer. So you're not going to have that hanging around anywhere in your house. All right, so these guys can reach high-level germicide activity. Look what they're doing. They're basically inactivating the microbes' enzymes. Yeah?
So is that why they tell you in healthcare to wear the gloves with the wipes.
With the what?
Wipes?
Wipes?
Yeah.
Like underneath?
Disinfectant wipes. Is that
On
why
top?
they tell you to wear
Underneath
gloves?
or?
No, there's
No,
a certain
No,
kind
there's
of
no.
wipes that we
disinfectant
use
Uh-huh.
to disinfect.
Yeah.
Is it that? Cause it's.
Oh, like when you're using the wipes? Of
Yes.
course, of course. Those chemicals can go right through. I misunderstood you. Those chemicals, these guys, can go right through your skin and stuff. Your skin can absorb certain
Right.
things. Yeah, then you want to protect yourself from that, of course. Yeah. Okay. If you notice how these guys are killing, I'm talking about all of them, they're doing something to the bacteria, either their proteins or destroying some structure or the other, if you notice that. These guys inactivate enzymes. This one disrupts the membrane, denatures proteins, disrupts the membrane, inactivates proteins, inhibits nucleic acid synthesis. See, I told you, if the bacteria is made up of something, right? And you use a chemical that targets it, you can use that to kill it. Remember me saying that? So different chemicals have a different, what's called mode of action. In this case here, these two inactivate the bacterial enzymes. And if these enzymes are not working, the bacteria, of course, will die. Under liquids, you have variety of things. You got the phenols that we find in pine sol and Lysol. You got the alcohols that you find in hand sanitizers. You got the acids and the alcohol. These are for pickling purposes, to pickle food. If you like pickles and stuff like that, that would be things like vinegar. You got your soaps that do nothing for you. Did you know that your Irish Spring, if you use Irish Spring, is doing nothing for you? All it's doing is mechanical removal of the dirt on your hand, for example. It does very little killing of anything. See? Very low germicidal activity. So soaps don't necessarily kill much. They are more for mechanical removal. They make your hand smell good afterwards, right? The soaps that are really effective are the hospital ones. They add something in there. And it's chlorhexidine. It's a phenol. So they're going to add a phenol into the soap to make it more effective. In hospitals, you're not using your standard soap here. You're not using your standard Irish Spring in the hospital. You're using a soap with chlorhexidine in it. Much, much more effective than your standard Irish Spring or Dial, right? Did you know, I always scare you, before you leave you're going to be like, if you have a soap dish at home, you know that dish that you put your soap on? I bet you if you sample that, you'll have bacteria on there. There are some bacteria that love your soap dish. Why? Because you put your soap there and they love soap. There are chemicals in the soap that they live off of. So basically, you use a soap like that, what are you doing? You're spreading it on your hands. So you might want to change your approach. Maybe get one of those that pump the soap out. You see what I mean? Instead of a soap dish and a soap bar instead. Yeah. Question?
No.
But chlorhexidine added to soap makes soap much more effective. But that would be more of a hospital setting. Okay, halogens. Halogens are your chlorine and your iodine. The chlorine is what you would put, for example, in the pool or on your clothes for bleach, for example. Remember I told you something about chlorine? Chlorine can be inactivated or not as effective in the presence of what? Organic matter. Yeah. Iodine, which is betadine, this is what they typically use right before you go into surgery. They wipe your skin down with betadine, discolors your skin. but it's very effective in killing the bacteria on the surface of your skin, yeah, before they cut you, to prevent an infection. The heavy metals, silver and copper, before the discovery of antibiotics, it was all about these heavy metals. They used to actually use these. But now what do we know about these? What do we know about mercury, for example? Oh, it's toxic. You know, I remember me as a kid a long time ago. Every time I come over here, I remember the story. We used to actually play with thermometers after they break. A long time ago, when I was a little kid back in Egypt there, we would have fun when the thermometer breaks. They used to use mercury in the thermometer. You can't find mercury in thermometers anymore. And we would be like, oh, it's cool. Look at that. All the liquids fly in and you can actually put them back together and break them apart. That's mercury. I was literally poisoning myself playing with it, right? Maybe that explains why. I don't know. But you can't get a thermometer with mercury in it anymore. You know, if a thermometer with mercury falls today at Valencia in this building will be shut down for a week or so. Maybe you want to do that, right? They'll have to decontaminate the whole building. Meanwhile, here I am 30 years ago or 40 years ago playing with it. More than 40 years ago. Playing with it, right? But now we know mercury is really bad for you. So you can make fun of me playing with it, but I can make fun of you, especially the women in this room, applying it with your makeup. It's in your makeup. Not a lot of it, but there's still mercury in the makeup. In your, what's that called? Eyeliner and all that stuff. They're in there. They're trying to do what they're supposed to do, keep the bacteria from multiplying and stuff, but they're in there. But they're very effective though. The silver is still used till today, but it's mostly used as an ointment. You're not ingesting it. It's mostly used as an ointment for burn victims. It's very effective for burn victims. All right, so they did have use one time or the other, but once antibiotics were discovered, we of course started shifting away from them. And sure enough, that was a good decision because they proved to be very harmful to you and I. The other thing you might want to think about, if you have an old filling like I do, because I'm an old man, right? They actually recommend that you change the filling because they used to use some of these metals in the old fillings that they don't use today. I had like 2 or 3 of them. I decided to change one of them. It cost me $700. The other 2 are still here. And I'll get to them eventually. When I become rich. All right. Let's change gears. Hang on. Let's do the common sense thing again. We're not going to change gears. All this stuff what we talked about. What did we talk about? We talked about chemicals that we spray on our countertop. We talked about antisepsis, cleaning our hands, soap, detergents, all those things. But what you really want to hear about, I know because you're in the medical field, antibiotics. Now we're going to talk about the antimicrobials that you actually take as medicine to kill pathogens within your body or on your body. Some of these antibiotics or antimicrobials are made by microorganisms, naturally, like penicillin. There's a special fungus that makes penicillin. So those would be referred to as natural antimicrobials. Antimicrobial agents that are made naturally by microorganisms. Okay. And then there are some that the microorganism makes, but then a scientist says, I can change it, tweak it to make it better. So it's half natural, half synthetic. So those are called semi-synthetic antimicrobial drugs. And then there are some that the scientist says, I can make the whole thing myself. So those would be called what? What do you think? Synthetic. So natural, semi-synthetic, and fully synthetic. Those are the possible sources of these antimicrobials. Now let me ask you this question. If I give you an antibiotic, and I tell you that this antibiotic, will hurt you because you're allergic to it, would you take it? Of course not. So obviously, what makes a good antibiotic? An antibiotic that I'm not allergic to. Yeah. How about this one? Here's an antibiotic for you. Yeah, give me $500. Versus antibiotic, how much? Free. Yeah, free. Free is the best, right? Affordable. Am I right? Good. How about an antibiotic that I give you, and then I tell you, by the way, in about 2 weeks or so, the bacteria that you're trying to fight, will become antibiotic resistant against that antibiotic. Would you want to take that antibiotic? Of course not. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you something. A lot of students make a mistake with this. I don't know why they make a mistake with this. They think when someone says antibiotic resistance, they think that the host is antibiotic resistant. So if I'm gonna be antibiotic resistant, how am I gonna be antibiotic resistant? Who's the antibiotic trying to kill? The bacteria. Why would I have to worry about that? You see what I mean? Who worries about becoming resistant to the antibiotic? Me or the bacteria? Of course. But do you know how many students by mistake think, and that includes my online teaching as well, they think the host is going to become antibiotic resistant. No, it's the bacteria that's becoming antibiotic resistant. Don't make that mistake. So if I tell you, this antibiotic that I'm going to give you, the bacteria will eventually become resistant to it, would you take it? Of course not. You would take a different one. One that the bacteria cannot figure out how to become resistant to. How about activity? Hey, take this antibiotic, By the way, you have to take it every hour, on the hour. So at 12 o'clock, you're taking one. 1 o'clock, you're taking another one. 2 o'clock, you're taking another one. If someone sees you doing this without knowing that it's an antibiotic, they're going to be thinking, what's going on with you? Right? What are you popping every hour on the hour, right? And it's just an antibiotic. Versus, take this antibiotic, the next time is 24 hours later. Which one would you take? Of course, long-lasting is much better than every hour you have to take another pill. You know, there are some antibiotics now that you can take one per week, one per month actually. There's some antifungals you take one per week. They're very strong. But antifungals has a different problem. Antifungals can also hurt your liver. So a doctor that gives you an antifungal will most likely, after the treatment is over, will test your liver function to make sure that you're still okay. Unfortunately. Okay. Considering that your blood is what transports the antibiotic to all parts of your body, would you want the antibiotic to be soluble or insoluble? Soluble. Of course, soluble. Okay, would you want the antibiotic to be bactericidal or bacteriostatic? Because cidal means kill. Very good. And then here comes the last one. And this is the clincher. This is something you would not know naturally there. We have to study this one here. Selective toxicity. Let me ask you this question. When you go to a doctor and you have a bacterial infection, would you want the doctor to prescribe something to you that kills you or the bacteria? Yeah. If a doctor prescribes something that kills you, please change the doctor. Don't take the medicine. All right? Selective toxicity. I'm going to take a medicine, that kills the pathogen, but not me. Of course. Now, there has to be something that I'm taking advantage of, and we'll talk about it. But we have to understand what selective toxicity is, and if you really focus on the two words, it kind of like makes sense. You're using a medicine that selectively is toxic to the bacteria, but not you.
But isn't all
No, watch and see. By the way, I am not going to go over the Kirby Bauer method. Why do you think? We did it already. Okay, let's move on. So here's the answer to your question. To achieve selective toxicity, it will make sense to you if you're listening. I have to target something the bacteria has. There you go. The host does not have. And one of the best things is the cell wall. Do you have a cell wall? No, I hope not. You don't have a cell wall. But most bacteria do. Some are thick and some are thin, but they have cell walls. So if I have, and for some reason it's cut off here, if I'm using penicillin targets the cell wall. Then I can use penicillin to achieve selective toxicity by targeting the bacterial cell wall that I don't have. There you go. All right, I'm going to ask you this question because you asked me. Polymyxin targets the bacterial cell membrane. When you take that antibiotic, will that hurt you or the bacteria or just you or just the bacteria? What's going to happen? Who will it hurt? Why? There you go. So you answered your own question. That's how you do it. Polymyxin is one of the worst things you can take as an antibiotic because it targets cell membrane. There's no selective toxicity with that because you have a cell membrane too. Your cell membrane is no different than bacteria's cell membrane. The polymyxin is not going to know the difference. It's going to think you're bacteria too. Polymyxin will damage, for example, your kidneys. Polymyxins tend to be actually more of a last resort kind of antibiotic. When a doctor feels like we're running out of options with this guy, meaning you have a bacterial infection and the bacteria is resistant against all known antibiotics. One of the last things that will save you, potentially maybe, is a polymyxin. So the doctor is going to give you a polymyxin, something like colistin, knowing that it's going to hurt you. But you'll be doing it in the hospital, obviously, and they'll be watching you. And they'll sit there and pray and say, I hope he responds. Before his kidney gets fried out, I hope he responds. Because it's a last resort kind of thing. They exhausted all their options. Because you happen to come down with something that is resistant against all known antibiotics. So they're going to reach for this one knowing that it will hurt you, but they have no other options. You're going to die otherwise, unfortunately. Now, sometimes they can save the person doing it, but sometimes they still can't save the person. Obviously, if you already have kidney problems, you're really tying their hands. They can't help you then. So we go from high selective toxicity with the penicillins to very no selective toxicity, right? With the polymyxins. All right, what about the tetracycline? Well, what about all of these guys, for example? Well, they target the bacterial ribosome. What size was that? 70S. Do I achieve selective toxicity?
No.
Kinda. No.
No.
What is it?
Depends on the concentration of the antibiotic.
Explain.
So if it's a higher concentration, I would suppose that it would also attack the mitochondrial ribosome
Beautiful. Why?
because they're the same size as the bacteria.
Where did I get the 70 acid in my mitochondria from?
Well, based on the end-of-semion theory, we
Very
involve the
good.
bacteria.
Excellent. So you're saying to me that if I'm using tetracycline as directed by a doctor, I should be okay. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Unless
Good.
you overdose on it.
If I take too much of it, then I'm going to be in trouble because it will hurt my mitochondria because the mitochondria used to be bacteria. That's the name of the theory was or is endosymbiosis, and that's where it has the 70 ants, right? But what cellular function will it inhibit? Metabolism. So what is it? Cellular respiration. What can I not make anymore? Oh, I'm dead. No ATP, I'm dead. There it is. So you can achieve selective toxicity with this guy only if you use as directed. Very good. Serena, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell me how you achieve selective toxicity with tetracycline.
So,
Tell me.
how do you select selective toxicity?
Yeah.
Which is, selective toxicity is, I know what it is. It's basically, not killing the host, but.
Good.
killing the
But how do you achieve it with tetracycline?
I don't know.
Pay attention with me. Good. All right. Stay alert with up here, please. I'm trying to help you guys. The fluoroquinolones. The fluoroquinolones target the synthesis of nucleic acids. I actually happened to be watching something yesterday, and this cardiologist comes on, and then he grabbed my attention right away when he goes, the 3 most common drugs people take that destroy your heart. Oh, look, you got my attention there. And I was shocked what he said. Why? Because I take 2 of them. And you do too. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These are your Advils, your Aleve, your ibuprofen and Motrin, your Celebrex, Meloxicam, I think that's pronounced that way. What else? I emptied the shelf, right? They're all bad for your heart. That's what he said. Now, I'm not going to believe him. I'll read about it. But at least he got my attention. And then he goes over there, fluoroquinones. Oh, no. That's like Cipro. Oh, it really actually damages your heart. It can cause arrhythmias and other things. That according to him. And he is a cardiologist, so I kind of believe him. But I'll read about it. The other one is a medication, what's it called? Adderall for ADHD, I think it is. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. And I'm like, a lot of people take that too. So you might want to do your reading on that. But fluoroquinolones typically, what they would do is they would target the bacterial chromosome making machinery. Why? Because they target bacterial enzymes. Because some students would say, well, we make DNA too, and you'd be right. We make RNA too, and you'd be right. So why are fluoroquinolones selectively toxic? Because these guys target bacterial enzymes, not your enzymes. So your DNA synthesis will be fine, even when you're on this medication. So what the doctor is actually saying about this guy is that this guy has a side effect. I mean, which medicine doesn't have a side effect? They all do. But I don't like the side effect that he mentioned, that destroys your heart. That's not a side effect you want to take risks with. So let's review. Penicillin is the highly selective toxic. Why? Because it definitely targets a structure the bacteria has that you don't have. Polymyxin is the worst. Why? Because it targets the cell membrane. And both you and the bacteria have a cell membrane. I would not want to touch a polymyxin unless you know it's definitely gonna hurt, especially your kidneys. Your tetracyclines will be selectively toxic if used as directed. If you go pushing it, you will hurt your mitochondria as well. The fluoroquinolones, they are selective because they target the bacterial enzymes, not yours. So your DNA machinery will still work fine even if you're on the fluoroquinolones. Okay, this one needs your attention. Folic acid synthesis. Why would your cell need folic acid? Well, folic acid makes adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and uracil. What are these? What are they? Nucleotides. Very good. Nucleotides. Good. They're the building blocks of what? DNA and RNA. Well, watch this. Sulfonamides, or commonly referred to as sulfa drugs. And some people are allergic to sulfa drugs. Commonly referred to as sulfa drugs. What do? It's they stop or inhibit the synthesis of folic acid. We need folic acid too. When, for females in this room, for example, if you go and a doctor goes to you and says, congratulations, what happened? You're pregnant. And here's folic acid for you. Not for you. For who? The husband, no, the baby, right? It's for the baby. Why? Because the doctor will say this to you. Your baby, yeah? He or she is about to go from 1 cell, yeah, to 9 pounds. That's a high rate of cell division. Called what? Don't say binary fission. Called what? Mitosis. Very high rate of mitosis. From a single cell to 9 pounds in 9 months. That's a lot of cell division. The interesting thing is, if you're in my Gen Bio, you probably heard it. Right after you're born, the rate of mitosis drops significantly. Better. You know what you would be like if the rate of mitosis continued to increase after your birth? You'd be a huge. You'd be 5 times as tall as this building, maybe bigger. But we don't have do it that. We grow really fast in the first 9 months in utero, and then we slow down, right? But we still grow, obviously, because we go from a baby to an adult, but not at the same rate. So what do we need? A, G, C, N, N. Yeah, you need to make DNA and RNA. By the way, folic acid is also involved in the making of a handful of amino acids. So what are we making with the amino acids? Proteins. So when you take sulfa drugs, that's how you're killing the bacteria. You're inhibiting them from making folic acid, which will also make A, G, C, T, U, and the amino acids. They're dead. They die from this, of course, because they can't do DNA replication, they can't do transcription, and they can't do translation. No bacteria can survive that. I can't survive not replicating the DNA transcription. Are you kidding? No way I can survive that. But the question now is, how do you survive that? That should be toxic to you, because you too need folic acid. So how do you survive that? Do I have any guesses?
Take it as directed.
Huh?
Take it as directed.
Take it?
Take it as like directed.
No.
What's the question again?
How do you survive the sulfonamide? Because you too need folic acid.
Would you take something to balance it out?
Say?
Would you take something to balance it out?
Explain.
Like the supplement?
Explain.
Would just take this.
No. I'll tell him. We'll take one more.
Would you take a folic acid supplement with the sulfonamide to balance it out?
Beautiful, but watch this. You don't even have to do that. All you have to do is eat.
Oh.
That's it. And I do that very well. This is my point of view of saying this. You get your folic acid from your food. You don't have to make it. You see what I mean? You don't have to make it, but the bacteria has to make it. And that's how you're achieving selective toxicity with this guy. Watch this. I don't have to synthesize folic acid. I'm the human talking. I get folic acid and plenty of it with my food. You see? So even if you inhibit my folic acid synthesis, it's not going to hurt me. I get it from my food. But the bacteria can't say that. The bacteria says, I can't eat folic acid, I have to make it. And you're inhibiting my ability to make it, so I'm going to die. That's the bacteria talking. And that's how you achieve selective toxicity with this one. It's pretty clever, actually. Now, if you go out of your way and not eat folic acid, if you go and find all the foods that have folic acid and say, nope, I'm not eating it, then now you're in trouble, of course. But that'll be hard to do. The answer to this question is yes. What's the question?
Yes.
No, what's the question? That's the answer. What was the question? Do we have to know all of this? Yes. After you're done with your nursing school, I want you to promise me something. Come and see me in my office, just for a minute. And I want you to compare your nursing 1 class with this line. And you'll be like, this is nothing compared to what I have to do now. Do we understand each other? We obviously could have made it a lot worse for you, because there are a lot of antibiotics out there, thank God, right? But the issue is that why did we choose these is because most likely once you go to practice, you're going to treat somebody with these. Or you may have already treated yourself with these. Or if you have a son or a daughter or a brother or a sister, you know someone, maybe you, who took tetracycline before, or penicillin before, or whatever. But I know for a fact, when you go out there and start working in the field, you'll be definitely, most likely, working definitely with these and more. So what do we need to know from this? We need to know the mode of action. Obviously their name and the mode of action. This guy here is penicillin or the cephalosporins. Look what they target. They target the cell wall. They either break down or prevent the synthesis of the cell wall in bacteria. Typically, they prevent their synthesis. So, how do they do it? Now watch this. They inhibit an enzyme. The penicillin and the cephalosporin inhibit an enzyme called transpeptidase that makes the cell wall. So bacteria produces an enzyme called transpeptidase, and they use this enzyme to build the cell wall. If you take penicillin, penicillin is going to go to the transpeptidase and block it to prevent it from making the cell wall. And what's going to happen to the bacteria? It's going to die through lysis because it's not protected by the cell wall anymore. So the penicillin and the cephalosporins, that's what they do. They inhibit the transpeptidase, prevent the building of the cell wall. Now, there's something that's in common to both of these antibiotics. It's something called the beta-lactam ring, and you'll see it in another slide. There's the chemical structure of penicillin and the chemical structure of cephalosporin. They both share what's called the ring structure. It's called the beta-lactam ring. So I'm going to pretend as if, watch, this is the ring structure right here. All right. And I am penicillin. What happens is this. If you add me to bacteria, I'm going to bind to the transpeptidase and inhibit it from making the cell wall. And that will kill the bacteria. Unless the bacteria has a trick up its sleeve. What is that? The bacteria says, oh, I release penicillinase. Penicillinase is an enzyme that breaks down, can you guess? Penicillin. before it has a chance to stop the transpeptidase. So we call that bacteria penicillin resistant. You see that? So the enzyme penicillinase is going to go to the penicillin and break it down before penicillin has a chance to stop the synthesis of the cell wall. Penicillinase does this by targeting the beta-lactam ring. And you'll see that in the last slide. Penicillinase breaks the beta-lactam ring on penicillin, rendering penicillin inactive. Cephalosporin has a beta-lactam ring too. But even if the bacteria is resistant, it's not going to be as effective against cephalosporin as it is against penicillin. The question is why? Even though they both have a beta-lactam ring. Here's why. Watch up here, please. Look up here, please. You'll be my next target. The beta-lactam ring is exposed in penicillin. In cephalosporin, the beta-lactam ring is hidden. You see the difference? This is penicillin. Easy access to the beta-lactam ring. The enzyme comes in, breaks the ring, the penicillin is not active. But in cephalosporin, it's hiding. The chemical structure allows it to be hidden behind these two arms here. Now, can you still get to it? Yes, but it'll take more effort. Do you see what I mean? The other problem with penicillin, and in some cases cephalosporin, is that some people are actually allergic to especially penicillin. Some moieties on the chemical structure here of penicillin that they are allergic to. Obviously, if you are allergic to penicillin, then you can't use it. You got to use something else. All right, there are other antibiotics that are used, and they will be the ones targeting, for example, the 70S ribosome. All of these are targeting the bacterial ribosome. Now let's look at them. The streptomycin. Let's read it carefully, please. Binds to the 30S ribosome subunit, producing abnormal protein protein by misreading the mRNA. Listen to what this antibiotic does. This antibiotic tells the ribosome, don't believe your eyes. What? You know that codon that you're reading? Yeah? What are you reading? AAA? No, it's AGA. No, it's AAA. No, it's AGA. Just come on. So it misreads it. Even though it's AAA, it says, are you sure? Yeah, AGA would give me a different amino acid. Yeah, just go ahead. Next one. What are you reading now? CCC? No, it's GGT. I don't know. Now you got a completely different what? Protein, right? Bacteria can't survive that. It's trying to make a protein and it's not making it. It's amazing how these things work. It's actually telling the ribosome, don't believe the codon that you're reading. Just put an amino acid there and move on. That means most likely it's going to put the wrong amino acid, which means it will make the wrong protein. And the bacteria won't survive that. Look what tetracycline does. Tetracycline blocks tRNA binding at the A site. If you remember from that unit, the next tRNA that's coming in with an amino acid is coming into the A site. Am I right? Not if tetracycline is there. If tetracycline is sitting in the A site, it will block the tRNA from coming in. The translation stops. This guy is a synthetic form of tetracycline. All right. What about this one? Erythromycin. Binds to the 50S ribosome subunit, inhibits translocation. What does that mean? Remember, the ribosome has to move one codon. Am I right? Read the next codon. Move one codon. Read the next codon. That's translocation. And this guy says, no, you're not moving. You're stuck. So it will not make the protein. You guys use this one, chloramphenicol, if you remember. Chloramphenicol inhibits peptide bond formation. If you remember from translation, the amino acid on the P site moves and goes to the A site. Not if this guy is there. It will prevent the formation of that peptide bond. Because when the amino acid moves from the P site and goes to the A site, it attaches itself to the growing amino acid chain using a peptide bond. Not if this guy is there. So all of these will definitely stop translation. And they're very effective because of that. We already talked about sulfonamides. How do they kill the bacteria? They prevent it from making folic acid, which means they cannot make A, G, C, T, U. They can't make DNA, they can't make RNA, they also can't make the amino acids, they can't make proteins. So this guy here, very highly effective. Fluoroquinolones, we already talked about these. They stop the synthesis of DNA and RNA by targeting bacterial enzymes. Polymyxin, we already talked about it. Now, this slide looks overwhelming when it first comes out, it shocks you, but then you realize, it's really not that bad. Polymyxins, they target the cell membrane, and because of that, they do not have selective toxicity. All right, almost there, guys. Hang in there. I promise to let you go early. How's that? There you go. Now, let's get there. All right, let's get there already. But I'll send you home with homework, anyways. I always ruin the fun. I know. The broad spectrum antibiotic versus narrow spectrum antibiotic, and you already kind of like get an idea of what it is. Broad spectrum antibiotic is an antibiotic that kills multiple bacteria. Am I right? Tetracycline is one of the best ones. Tetracycline kills a wide range of bacteria by targeting the ribosome and preventing the tRNA, the incoming tRNA, from binding to the A site. The isoniazid. Isoniazid is an antibiotic used typically, most likely, in TB infections, tuberculosis. Because isoniazid kills mycobacterium. And tuberculosis is a mycobacterium infection. So this is the key antibiotic used in TB infections, and because of that, it is a narrow spectrum antibiotic because it targets a specific thing. You do not need to memorize this slide, thank God. The only thing you need to know is the difference between narrow and broad spectrum antibiotic, and the words absolutely kind of like make sense. If you need to remember, tetracycline is definitely a broad spectrum antibiotic, and something like isoniazid and polymyxin would tend to be more of a narrow spectrum antibiotic. The anti-helminths I will not talk about because I know you can read the soft chalk and easily cut, but I like to share a story with this. This thing is, the way some of these drugs work is amazing, at least to me. Have you ever heard the Bible story of Lot and his family? Do you know who that is? Lot? Very religious man, believed in God way back then. Ever heard of Sodom and Gomorrah? Yeah, the two sinful cities. So Lot lived, this is a Bible story. So Lot lived in one of the two cities. I can't remember which one. But whichever city it was very sinful. The people living there, you name it, they did it, right? So you would go to Lot and say, why don't you just go to the city next door? Well, they were even worse. Sodom and Gomorrah. There are two cities next to each other, and the people that lived there, according to the Bible story, were sinful. I mean, you name it, they did it. Except for Lot and his family, who, according to the Bible story, followed God's word, prayed to God every day, and they were very good people. So God appeared to Lot and told him, Lot, get out of the city. Take your family and leave. He goes, why? He goes, because I'm going to burn it down. No, yeah, I'm out of here. Right? You're going to burn it down? I'm leaving. Right? So Lot obeyed, of course. He obeys God. So he obeyed. But God told him something. He said, and when you are leaving, don't look back. I don't know if you know the story or not.
Oh yeah, it became
Yeah.
salt.
Yeah, don't look back. Lot obeyed. His kids obeyed. Who did not obey? The wife. All right. Yeah. So they're all walking out of the city. He's telling them, don't look back. Well, everybody's screaming and shouting because they're all dying, right? And his wife does what? She looks back. And she turns into a pillar of? Yep. I think that area of the world, don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. I think it's in Iraq, maybe somewhere around there. So you go visit Iraq and you're going to meet a tour guide. You're going to go and he's going to say, $500, I'll show you Lot's wife. And you say, oh, you know where she's at? Yeah. So it takes you $500. I'm just kidding, by the way. Anyways, he goes, see this? Yeah. That's, there she is. See ya. Shows you a pile of salt, and there it is. He showed you Lot's wife, right? Don't fall for that, all right? But that's the story. So why am I saying this? Because that's what these medicines, at least some of them, that's exactly what they do to the parasitic worm. They force the worm to intake a high level of calcium, so high that it turns them into a pillar of salt. It's amazing. It's amazing how these medications work. And they're very effective, by the way. Long story for a hidden message there. All right, anyways, but it's a fun story. All right, antivirals. Oh, that one we definitely need to know. Antivirals. Tamiflu. I know you probably took Tamiflu before. Tamiflu prevents the virus from entering and as well as from leaving. So it prevents viral entry and viral release. So it does both things. The Fusion binds to the spike proteins and prevents them from ringing the doorbell. What was that called? Adsorption. Very good. When it comes to HIV, the first antiviral for HIV was azithromycin. You gotta listen to this one. Azithromycin. Thymidine is AGCT. It's T. But this is not your normal T. What? This is a broken T. Azithromycin. You don't want to use azithromycin to build your DNA. Why? Because it won't build. Watch this. If I'm using AGC and the normal T, pay attention with me, please. AGCT, and I'm using the normal T, this is what I would be able to do. AGCT, then I can still continue. GCT, GAGGT. I can use it, I can keep going. But if I use AGCAZT, that means the broken thymidine, here's what would happen. AGC, and then this one, AZT. That's it. I can't build on it anymore. Once you put in AZT, that's a broken thymidine. You can't attach the next nucleotide to it. So the DNA replication stops. Now that's a good thing if you're trying to inhibit viral DNA replication. Am I right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is this. Your cells too. Your cells as well do DNA replication. So patients, HIV patients, when they took AZT, yes, it stopped their virus from replicating, but at the cost of what? Of poisoning them. That's a poison. because their cells, their own cells, could not replicate DNA either. Because DNA is DNA, thymidine is thymidine. You can't tell the difference between the thymidine that you're using for making viral DNA and the thymidine that you're using to make your DNA. And there's no difference. So when they're taking AZT, they're taking a broken thymidine. They are definitely going to stop their virus from replicating at the cost of their own DNA replication being hurt. That's a poison. And they knew it was very bad, but that's all they had. In HIV back in the early 80s, that's all they had. So they didn't have anything else to use. I can't remember what year it is, but not too long after that, the news broke out that they discovered or developed protease inhibitors to combat HIV. Protease inhibitors promise to be less toxic than AZT. Why? Because they're inhibiting the enzymes, protease enzymes, that cleave proteins, viral proteins, during assembly. The capsomeres. The virus has to take the capsomeres, cut them, shape them, size them to make the what? The capsid. And that's the proteases. The proteases are scissors, molecular scissors of proteins, cutting proteins. But there's a problem. What? We have proteases too. These protease inhibitors, yes, they inhibited the viral proteases, but some of them also inhibited our proteases. So they were toxic as well. They're not as toxic as this one, but they're also toxic. But then they said, but that's all we had. Until this guy came on the scene. Now I ask you this question. Fusion is highly selective. Sage, why? Why is fusion highly selective? Hang on. No. So what did she say? Yeah. What did she say? Go ahead, help her out.
It only binds to the spike protein.
So why is that?
Preventing absorption.
Good. So why is that highly selective?
We don't have spike protein.
There it is. There it is. The fusion specifically binds to the spike proteins of the virus. Does your cell have spike proteins? I hope not. That's it. Yeah.
Is AZT or Indinavir ever prescribed still?
I think in some cases, yes, they're still prescribed. But I think more like somebody like Magic Johnson, he's rich enough to buy the good stuff. Yeah. But this is actually becoming more and more common. Have you ever heard something called PrEP?
Yeah.
You've heard of that? That's this guy, similar to this. That is. PrEP is used as a adsorption blocker for people that are at high risk. So yeah, if they think they had an interaction that is of high risk, the first thing that they recommend that you do, even before you get tested and all that, just take PrEP. You take PrEP to prevent the virus from ringing the doorbell to begin with. So they don't even have a chance to get in there and start replicating, because if they get in there and they start replicating, now PrEP is not going to help you. PrEP will help you only before the first doorbell is rung. You see what I mean? So typically people that live that high risk lifestyle, they have it available. So right away, they're either on it all the time, so they can have it circulating in their blood to prevent the ringing of the doorbell, even the first doorbell. Because if the first doorbell is rung and that virus enters that house, that's it. PrEP is not going to help you anymore, because they're already in there and they're going to incorporate into the DNA and they start replicating. But I think my understanding is, don't quote me on it, but I'll have to read about it. But these can still prescribe these, maybe in lower dose, if they're combining it with this one. Yeah.
So how come it's not like something that you could become resistant to, or like, because if you're just taking it
you don't become resistant to these things.
How come the virus does it?
Well, the virus can mutate, and that's the whole idea of the COVID-19, why you lined up 4 or 5 times to take the vaccine, right? Because the virus can by chance mutate, and where this guy doesn't work anymore because it now has a different spike protein. You see what I mean? It can happen, but it can, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. Now, there is something that is not on here that I've been trying to remember to add, and guess what happens every semester? I forget. So I'm going to add it right now. Integrase inhibitors. Integrase inhibitors. What would that mean to you? Anyway.
It stops the virus from integrating its DNA into your cell's DNA, which.
Beautiful. Do we have integrase? No. So the virus comes with the enzyme, am I right? Good. Would an integrase inhibitor now be considered selectively toxic? Yes. Why?
Because it's only selecting the virus.
How?
Because it's only the virus that has integrase.
Absolutely. You don't have to fight me for it. I agree with you. She's going to beat me up. Yeah. Good job. I absolutely agree with you. Boy, did I get your attention now. Good job. You're absolutely right. You're targeting something the virus has that you know you don't have. So the best 2 selectively toxic medications for something like HIV is Fusion and the integrase inhibitor. These are not selectively toxic per se because we too have proteases. This one is no way is it selectively toxic. This is very highly toxic because a broken thymidine is a broken thymidine. You don't need to know this line because you already know all medications cause problems to you, right? Yes, they are good because they try to alleviate a problem, but they're also causing potentially other problems, like tetracycline. Actually, long-term use of tetracycline can discolor your teeth. Long-term use of other antibiotics can actually damage your kidney, damage your liver, and do other things to you. Now we heard about fluoroquinolones. I heard about it yesterday. It can damage your heart, according to this cardiologist. Right? I have to read about that. You don't need to remember this slide. Okay, last slide, thank God. Do you think the bacteria is going to sit there and take it? Yeah, go ahead, kill me. No, it's going to try to become? Who is resistant, you or the bacteria? You better answer that question right on the exam. I'll remember that. All right. It's the bacteria that becomes antibiotic resistant, not you, the host. So, in some cases, the bacteria is going to produce an enzyme that breaks down the penicillin, for example. Here's the beta-lactam that I was talking about. Here it is. Here's the beta-lactam ring. The enzyme will break this ring, do you see? Rendering the penicillin inactive. So we would call this bacteria, the bacteria that has this gene, we would call this bacteria penicillin resistant. Very good. But you got to catch what I just said. The bacteria that has this gene, this is an enzyme. It's a product of gene expression. Am I right? So this bacteria has to have the penicillinase gene. Now, it can wait for evolution. It can wait for random mutations that are rare and wait to develop the gene. Are you kidding?
By the time it'll be dead.
Yeah, it'll be that. There you go. Thank you. I agree with you. So, if you already have a copy of that gene, let's say you have a copy of the penicillinase gene, is that right? Watch this. And I need it. And I go, can I have a copy of that? Say yes. Say yes. Okay, thank you. Isn't that much easier to just beg a copy than for me to wait and see if evolution is going to do it for me? No. It's better to just get a copy. How? Ah, there you go. Conjugation, that would be through a... Nice. What else? Transformation. If she releases it into the environment, I can just take it, right? So conjugation, transformation. What else? Transduction. Who's involved in transduction?
Bacterial phase.
The bacterial, don't say Dr. Saad's hands. The bacteriophage. Very good. The bacteriophage is gonna go take that gene out of her and insert it in me. Am I right? What do we call that one? Transduction. What about the jumping genes? Transposons. What do we call all of those?
Inherited.
Huh?
Mutations?
No, not vertical. The horizontal. Which transfer? What's transferring? There it is. Horizontal gene transfer. Oh, we got some reviewing to do. So, basically what I'm trying to tell you is if she has the gene, I can get a copy of it through horizontal gene transfer. As soon as I hear these three words, right away my mind goes to conjugation, transformation, transduction, transposons. One of those ways. But the idea is I get a copy of the gene. I'm not going to wait for evolution to do it. So, same thing with this one. Watch this one. The antibiotic will bind to a receptor and it will enter the cell. Once it enters the cell, if you give it a little bit of time, it will kill that cell. Unless what? Unless you go to the next door neighbor who has a drug pump and ask this person here, can I get a copy of that? Get a copy of what? Of the gene that produces a drug pump. So that when the antibiotic comes in, yeah, you kick it back out. You see that? The antibiotic comes in, before it has a chance to do anything, you kick it back out. I love teaching this part in the lab because we have a back door in the lab. I don't know if you know that. So I tell students as the antibiotic comes in, you kick it back out. Did it have a chance to do anything? Nope. So we would call this bacteria too antibiotic resistant, but for a different reason. It has a drug pump, right? But this drug pump is a product of a full gene. You can wait for evolution to do it, but you're going to be waiting a long time. I'll just go in and ask a copy. Ask her for a copy. Do you see? On this side, these guys are produced by mutations. So hopefully you know the difference between the two. This one, these two here, the bacteria has to acquire the full gene. But these all they do is they tweak things. I'll give you an example. If you walk out of this room and I don't want to let you back in, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go outside and go like that, lock you out. I don't have to buy a new door. I don't have to buy another door. I just tweak it. I lock it. Now you're stuck. That's equivalent to this one. The antibiotic has to bind to the receptor to enter the cell, only if the receptor has this shape. Well, the receptor is a byproduct of gene expression. So if something goes and mutates the gene, just tweaking, instead of a G, C, changes the amino acid, changes the shape of the receptor, locking out the antibiotic. You see? It's no different than sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is one amino acid is different. That's it. But it's a devastating disease. So the mutation, just one base pair or amino acid mutation results in a change in the shape of the receptor, locking out the antibiotic. This bacteria becomes antibiotic resistant because of a mutation. Same thing with this one. The tetracycline, for example, binds to a specific site on the ribosome. And let's say the site is this shape. If anything changes the shape of that, then the antibiotic cannot bind. And what would change the shape of that? Mutations. So a mutation will tweak the shape of the binding site enough to prevent the antibiotic from binding. But there is something tricky about this one. Whatever mutation that happens in the ribosome, it better only change the shape of this, not the function of the ribosome. If the mutation by chance also affects the function of the ribosome, the bacteria will still die. Am I right or not? With or without the antibiotic, it will still die. So the trick to this one, the bacteria that succeeds with this, is the one that by random chance, you can't control mutations, are the ones that at random chance tweak the shape of the binding site with no effect on the function of the ribosome. The ribosome still works the same. Then we got this one. This one is, for example, we have an important metabolite over here. We have to make her. We're the bacteria. We have to make her. Without her, we don't survive. So she is this right here. D. So how do I get to her? A to B, B to C, C to D, well, E. We'll make her E. A, B, C, D, E. That's a metabolic pathway. There's an enzyme between me and you that will convert me to you. Do you see that? There's an enzyme between you and her that will convert you to her, and so forth, until we get to the important metabolite. Do you agree? You take an antibiotic. The antibiotic blocks this step. Will we have her? No, this cell is dead. This is bacteria. Unless, by chance, in the millions of bacteria that are growing, one or two or three of them decide to do this by random mutations. Produce another enzyme that will go to her this way. What do we call that? An alternative pathway. She's so important that if you block the main pathway, you kill the cell. So some of them, by random mutations, will produce another pathway to get to her. So I ask you this question. How do you kill this bacteria? How do you kill the bacteria that produce the alternative pathway? You block what?
The gene expression of that alternative.
That's fine. The gene expression or the enzyme, right?
Of the, yeah.
So I heard you. You said the same thing, right? You block the alternative pathway while at the same time you're blocking this original pathway. Am I right? Yeah, that's called multi-drug therapy. You might be part of that in the future as a nurse or a doctor or whatever. You might administer multiple drugs to your patient, not just one antibiotic, but actually 2 or 3 antibiotics at the same time.
What did you say that was called?
Multi-drug therapy. You're giving them multiple drugs. Why? One to block this way and another one to block the other way. Now that will die.
Is it like,
Can it develop another pathway? Possibly. Yeah.
is it like, you talked about the folic acid synthesis, like the one that targets, and then the one that targets cell membrane. You told something about we have to use them together, so that would be considered.
That could be considered multi-drug therapy, but the multi-drug therapy that I'm talking about would be 2 drugs, that one that affects this enzyme to block this pathway, and another one that affects this enzyme to block this pathway, this alternative pathway. Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
closing all the routes.
Closing all the roads to get to her. Now that bacteria will die. Can it by chance mutate and produce another pathway? Possibly. Of course. If the bacteria wants to make her, the bacteria needs to make her.
Right.
So if you block all the pathways to making her, you kill the bacteria. But you're the host, you want the bacteria to die. The bacteria wants to survive, and how will the bacteria overcome the medication? It produces an alternative pathway to her. It's sort of like if you're driving on the highway and you find that I-4 is blocked. You say, oh, but I still need to go to work. I'm going to go this way, take an alternative pathway to get to my work.
So the drug is blocking both the pathways.
Yeah, the multi-drug will block all the roadways. Now the only way is to go home. We're good? Good. Yes.